Before we start today's show, we want to invite you to stick around at the end of the episode to enjoy a preview of a new podcast that premieres on July 14th. As the industry's exclusive cannabis podcast network, MJBulls is proud to present Women Leading in Cannabis. Join host Kira Reed each week for inspirational discussions with women who are leading the cannabis industry. Welcome to another episode of Hemp Barons. I'm Dan Humiston, and on today's show, Joy takes us on a deep dive into some of the equipment necessary to grow and process hemp with one of hemp's largest United States-based growing and extraction manufacturer. Let's join Joy's conversation with Derek Oxford from Total Grow Controls.
Well, thank you for being with us on the show today, Derek. Welcome to Hemp Barons.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, you, Derek Oxford, what is your role at Total Grow Technologies?
So I am the founder and the CEO at Total Grow Control. We've been in this space roughly 5 years now.
And that's one of the many reasons why I was interested in having you on Hemp Barons. Unlike many of the fly-by-night or just popping up grow and processing equipment companies that are out there, Total Grow is quite established. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you offer specifically in the hemp industries?
Yeah, so we came out of heavy industry. I actually came from Ashland Oil before I started the company. Our focus was always controls, process related. About 5 years ago, we identified the need to help cultivators. And one of the things we identified was they need the same level of sophistication that we would see in manufacturing, mainstream manufacturing, whether it's making a car or producing a product line for cosmetics or for alcohol production. At the end of the day, those companies and industries have been established. So they have highly sophisticated systems everywhere from the production systems to the ERP systems to manage them. And we found that this industry was really missing it. So our goal was to bring that same level of sophistication, both from a automation, but from a process standpoint to this industry to try to help it move along. And I think we've done quite well with that.
So, and as I wanted to make sure that we sort of establish, when we say this industry, understand that the hemp industries are human and animal nutrition, body care, pharmaceuticals, paper, textiles, building materials, biocomposites, bioresins, industrial sealants and coatings, energy, supercapacitors, fuel, nanotechnology, biomedical applications. Dear Lord, somebody stop me, Derek. So when you say this industry, let's get real specific here about what the industry within hemp that Total Grow is assisting with. And what industry is that within hemp?
I mean, the hemp industry is vast. And I think a lot of people forget the fact that when Henry Ford built the Rouge, he built it with hemp in mind for many of the feedstocks that he needed to build a car. Everything from the seats, the paints, and some of the coatings that he wanted to have in cars, he always had hemp in mind. So this is an industry that for a while was pushed to the side, ignored or not acknowledged, and now it's coming back, and there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in this industry. And we're just a little bitty, tiny part of it. And our goal is to help our cultivators and our processors bring that level of both automation and sophistication that all the rest of the industry has, right? So we try to help our cultivators.
So let me ask you again so that I can really frame it for you and for the listeners here. And that's part of why the Hemp Industries Association in 1994, it's actually plural. So that's why I want to make sure that when we say the hemp industry, that you, if you could just answer this question for the listeners, which industry within hemp is Total Grow? And I guess what I'm trying to get out of you here is to say, are we talking about hemp extract, hemp cannabinoids, hemp terpenes, as opposed to all of these others. So when you say helping the cultivator and helping the processor cultivate what type of plants and process what type of product, let's just focus on that for a minute.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's back up. So from a cultivation point of view, our systems are designed to help control the grow itself. So our systems are designed to control the environment, the lighting, nutrient delivery, to track how the plants are growing. So it gives the grower the ability to see the same data and dashboard and to have the same level of controls that other groups have.
So then let me ask you this, so we can again just get really specific. And I'm so sorry here that we're not getting down to it.
No.
So the only type of hemp that is grown indoors is not hemp for oil seed or fiber or grain or for fiber. The only type of hemp that is grown indoors are hemp that is sown for what, Derek? What type of products?
So we actually have customers that do it for several. So we have one customer that grows hemp indoors only for seeds and turns around and sells that back out to the market. We have another customer that grows hemp only for flower indoors. So it depends on the customer and the location. And we take that, we're the high level view of controlling that facility, right? We have several companies.
So then I guess what I really want to make sure that the listeners understand, and it's all about education here at Hemp Barons, is that the only type of hemp that is grown indoors in a greenhouse or some other indoor facility is not the hundreds of thousands of acres and millions of acres with regard to grain, which is that beautiful nutrient-dense superfood, the hemp seed, the highest digestible form of protein, or for fiber, that long, strong stalk that we make so many industrial applications with. But certainly folks who are maintaining seeds in a breeding program or are cultivating seeds for further propagation, those are often done in a greenhouse. As well as outdoors. And then, of course, hemp sown for cannabinoids or terpenes for its extract. So that's what I just wanted to make sure the listeners knew, that this is a fairly narrow conversation on a huge industry, which is driving all of the infrastructure for all of the use of all of these other parts of that plant. So that's what I was trying to get to. And thank you. Now tell us about your processing.
So absolutely. So it's interesting you say that, because that's actually how we think about the market and how we drive what we do. The current markets that you talk about are for direct consumers, right? They don't go. These are hemp cultivation facilities that are using it to go in to make oils or extracts, right? Or seeds for further propagation. Or flower for smokable consumption, right? And that's primarily our customer base. But the beauty of this is those margins that this industry allows helps us better develop systems for the ancillary markets that we see coming later, for more hemp processing and other types of markets. So right now, yes, our focus and all of our customers are for flower, for hemp that will be extracted to produce oils, and then last but not least, the ancillary for cloning and for seed propagation. And then the other side of our business is actually the extraction side. So we develop and build extraction systems for CBD oil. So we kind of touch both sides of it now.
Excellent. And what do you see as the preferred method of lighting for indoor hemp growers who are growing for extract as opposed to cultivation? And then perhaps if you would share with us the preferred method, or at least what you're seeing in terms of sales for extraction. We see so much debate over CO2 versus ethanol. And then, of course, the old schoolers that are like, butane is still the best to preserve it all. And if you wash out all of the residual solvents, you're good. So What are you seeing there at Total Grow for these choices?
It's interesting. LEDs have made a very, very strong push onto the market, but we're still talking about cultivation, right? Which still requires that human touch, that human eye to see. And so we find now, even though LEDs have made a tremendous push, the economics are there from an energy saving standpoint. They're still fairly costly. And most all of the growers that we have usually do some type of hybrid system where they'll have HPSs and LEDs, and that's how they kind of get the energy savings they want, and they use the BTUs from the HPSs, and most all of them are happy with this mix. So overall, we've seen both, where it's just LEDs or just HPSs, but for the most part, we believe the market is really leaning toward these hybrid systems.
And indeed, we're seeing a lot of the hybrid systems getting the optimal performance. And for the listeners who don't know what HPS is, could you enlighten them, sir?
Yes, sure. Those are high pressure sodiums. Those are the most common methods for indoor cultivation for this market, and say for cannabis. And these two are very similar. So a lot of indoor cultivation for hemp really looks toward the cannabis space, and their many-year track record of building of growing indoors on which direction to go. So that's the big driver. So a lot of the innovation that you see, a lot of the lighting choices you see, a lot of the nutrient delivery you see was really a spinoff of indoor cannabis grows, and now has switched gears to hemp.
Indeed, it's pretty fascinating. And how about some problems that you see in greenhouses that Total Grow can in fact help to solve? What are some sort of common issues? We've got a lot of folks wanting to get in on this opportunity, retiring from their software or law careers to get into hemp farming, but don't necessarily have the experience or the ability to see around corners like someone who has been doing this type of work for some time would have the ability to do. What are some common problems that you're seeing, and how does Total Grow heal that pain for folks?
There's a bunch of common problems. So one of the biggest ones is usually, and it's funny you mentioned that, the people that are retiring, and we get a good bit of those where, hey, I'm retiring, I've got this fund, we've got a group of us, we're going to go build something, and right away that scares me, because these are physicians, attorneys, software people, like you said, and they have very little experience with this. And what we see coming out of the woodwork, a lot of, is what they call themselves as master growers, right? And they come out of the woodwork and they go talk to these people, and these people don't know any better, and have convinced them that I'm a master grower, I've been growing forever. Turns out the guy's been growing in his basement or his garage for the past 10 years, and he considers that his expertise. And scaling up to the size of these systems is complex. And the size of these grows, and what we see happen a lot, is they're led in directions by these guys that are so-called experts, and they don't rely on the tools, or don't use the tools that are out there to do it correctly. And there's tons of choices on how to control the environment, how to control lighting, how to control the entire cultivation facility. And first things we'll see is this master grower will normally be pretty apprehensive about, we don't want to bring technology in, we have to talk to the plants. But we also find that's the same guy that doesn't perform. And so the way Total Grow Control really helps our customers are, we have a platform that allows them to document and to put everything into one spot to control all those ancillary systems, so that if that master grower doesn't perform, which we find almost 50% of the time he doesn't, or if he or she disappears, or if he's hungover, or decides to be sick or hold his owner hostage, which we see happen, you still have a control system with all that information there to manage it. And that control system we call Eden. Eden is never high, is never sick, is never on vacation. Eden's job is to take care of the plants, and at the end of the day, take care of the overall facility. So it's no longer to the whim of this master grower that we see come out of the woodwork now. And that's one of the, by far, the biggest problems we see. The other one is there's just a tremendous amount of information. And it's not just us that sees this. You've probably got 10 plus high-end lighting vendors that all say they are the best. You've got just as much in controls, just as much in ACs. And what we see, and this is across the board, is it's very difficult to have everybody on a level playing field, right? Because we start talking about how much light production is being given, or how efficient an air conditioning is, or how efficient the control system is. And we're not all talking the same language. So there's a breakdown there because there's no standardization across. And that even goes all the way into the extraction and to the quality of the CBDs, because that's the other half of our business. Is we see people talking about miners, and we see people talk about extraction efficiencies, and then their methodologies, whether it be hydrocarbon based or CO2 based or ethanol based, and we see these claims that unfortunately are not standardized. And so it's very difficult for anybody getting into the industry to be able to identify the differences and really work through all these differences in order to find out what's best, or what really has the claimed efficiencies or gains as stated. And I think that's really, really one of our biggest challenges coming up, especially on the CBD production side.
Very much so. And I think what a lot of folks don't understand, and especially as the experienced folks trying to rightfully separate themselves in the marketplace, is no matter, you can have the greatest equipment in the world, the latest, the greatest, but it's still part science, part art here. You've really got to have those experienced extractors there who understand the equipment and have such experience with it that they know how to preserve as much of that original profile as possible. And so we're, and this talent, of course, is pretty valuable as this emerging industry exponentially takes root in this country. You probably saw the Gallup poll back in August of 2019, so just a few short months ago in summertime, that said 1 out of every 7 Americans are using a CBD product. That's some 14% of the United States. Pretty major. So you're getting a lot of phone calls, I'm assuming, then at Total Grow of folks who want in.
Yeah, we get a tremendous amount of calls now, and my phone number's actually made it out, so I get calls all the time, and I'll get calls from groups I've never heard of, and they heard about our big thing right now is our THC remediation equipment. Is probably, we feel, is one of the best solutions on the market, just because it has no consumables, and it really does a good job of keeping, not destroying all the miners. And one of our biggest challenges is what I just said before, is the vernacular, right? Getting everybody on the same page, and we talk about the same thing. Because when you start talking about a full spectrum, and then some say it's a broad spectrum, and we're talking about the CBD product that's going out to the packager, the end user, but there's still a little bit of deviation between what is that product and what does it really look like, and at what point is it to the level that we all agree is the common way to describe it. So we think that's where the market needs to really be going next, is, how do we get to the same vernacular to explain that same cannabinoid that we want to make sure that end user, when they're buying, they know exactly what they're getting.
So being on the same page as industry leaders, and that's what the U.S. Hemp Authority, and folks can learn about it at ushempauthority.org, has created those first CGMP standards for the hemp dietary supplement, food, and cosmetics industry. And we have also created a glossary. And in version 2.0, which was just released, we created standardized definitions for broad spectrum, full spectrum, and isolate. Here's the challenge. And we're having to put out version 2.1 because we released version 2.0. And that's made with, by the way, a huge technical committee from across multiple disciplines of hemp across the United States that put these standards together for version 1.0 and 2.0. I sit as vice president of the board, and the board approves and assists with that technical committee's drafting, but it's the technical committee that puts them together. And here's the challenge is you're trying to create definitions that close loopholes for folks. We know there are exploitations happening, of course, in this industry, folks exploiting the consumer's ignorance, folks exploiting a lack of a strict regulatory framework from the FDA, though we all agree that the FDA certainly does have a regulatory framework for the manufacturing, packaging, labeling, and holding of dietary supplements, food, and cosmetics. And anyone engaged in these industries needs to be following those, though there are some who are not. But I think that the bottom line is we're trying to close up loopholes so folks cannot exploit this industry without this strict framework, while also trying to be fair to manufacturers. And so we're already pushing back on our own definition of full spectrum. And so in version 2.1, it will be a revised definition, but it's a lot more complicated to come up with these standardized definitions than folks think, particularly when we're dealing with this framework that doesn't really exist for purity, for potency, for labels, warnings specific to, hemp extract. So it's really fascinating, but we agree 110%. What does full spectrum mean on your label versus what does it mean on my label? What does broad spectrum mean? And in fact, many folks think, broad spectrum means it absolutely has been remediated of its THC. Yet we have seen spectrums, we have seen extracts being advertised as broad spectrums that actually do have, when pulled out to several decimal points, a detectable amount of THC. So it's quite a challenge here, and yet here we are putting one foot in front of the other, working in tandem together and making it happen. And it's so great that Total Grow is such a part of it. How do you handle, by the way, the phone calls that you get? I think with most folks that are selling equipment or ingredient supplies, you end up having to spend, and as you know, sort of in the business of customer service and sales, there's really only so much time folks should be spending on a call, and yet folks are becoming little mini consultants, sales folks. How do you handle that at Total Grow when folks really want their hand held and you're not a consulting company, you sell equipment?
Yeah, we actually take a different approach to that. We recognize that there are some tremendous challenges. There's a tremendous learning curve for people coming into the market. And we do a few things very different just because of that. Number one, call us. We're happy to sit down and talk through what we know. The first thing we will tell you is, listen, we're not a processor and we're not growers, right? We've done a bunch. We know how to build the equipment. We know what most of the people want, and we know what fails. But we're not going to tell you absolutely this is how you grow something, but we're going to try to point you in the right direction if you're making a mistake. And the same thing applies on the processing side. So we do field the calls. We try to help the customer get moving, or the prospect get moving in the right direction. We do a few things that a lot of people, probably even some people in my company, disagree with. But if we don't bring value to that particular part of the project, like for instance, lighting, if you have a question on lighting, we're going to introduce you to the lighting experts. And we're just going to tell you, these are the guys we think are good. And that's it. We step out of that part of the transaction because we don't bring you any value there. These are guys that we trust. They did a good job. They're taking care of other customers. But we want you to do that. And we do that pretty much on anything we don't bring value to, right? That we can't really help you with. We try to put you with the experts. we do field the calls. And then once you move to a customer, we hold your hand in a sense the entire way. We assign a project manager to every project, big, small, medium, it doesn't matter. That's their responsibility to take care of you. It's their point of contact. We go on site to help ensure that they're comfortable, that the local disciplines are comfortable. And then when it's time to start up, we're on site right there with you. We feel the pains right there with you. We do the 12, 15, 16-hour days right there with you to get you going to assure you're successful. So we absolutely attack this in a different way. We welcome the calls.
Amazing, Chris. That alone, I would think, would get folks burning up those phone lines. That's some serious customer service that Total Grow offers. And it's absolutely what folks looking to get into this industry need. For ill or good, getting into it ignorantly or not, they need that help. So, Chris, that's amazing to hear. Can we talk a little bit more about your THC remediation and maybe just teeing it up for the customers? Teeing it up for the listeners here. Matter of fact, I don't even want a subliminal there. We're just going to wait 5 seconds, and I'll start that one again, Mr. Derek. So can we talk a little bit more about your THC remediation equipment, such an important part of the supply chain right now? And so that we can tee this up for the listeners, there is a piece of hemp extraction where we go from, we take a plant that has tested either at or below 0.3% THC as it was growing on a dry weight basis. We put it in the extracting equipment. And what comes out is this unrefined crude or unrefined hemp oil that generally has spiked above in this raw, unrefined state, spiked above 0.3% THC. And that THC needs to be remediated so that our full spectrum or broad spectrum products will test within the legal limit of hemp. So either at or below 0.3% in those finished products. So meanwhile, there's a little piece of the process here where hemp processors have in their possession a unrefined crude oil that contains a little bit greater than 0.3% THC. And that's where THC remediation comes in. Explain how Total Grow solves that problem for folks.
Sure. Thank you for teeing that one up for me, by the way. So you're absolutely right. So when processors are processing and extracting that material, it was tested below. But inherently, when you extract the material and you go through distillation, the crude will inherently exceed the limit. That's it's the stoichiometric math part of that, right? So our methodology. If you remember before, I said I came from Ashland Oil before we started the company, and most of all of my team came from petrochemical and refining. So what we did is we looked at the problem in the industry, and just like we brought controls and we brought that sophistication, we did the same thing. The first thing we did is try to understand what are the real volumes people are doing, what are the real choke points, and what's the current best methodologies out there. So right away, we could see that the average volumes on a geographically centralized processor, a toll processor, could be anywhere from 1,000 liters a month to 40,000 liters a month. But their largest choke point was usually THC remediation, because most all of them use the same methodology, which is chromatography. While chromatography is proven, it works well in the lab, it scales up, but it doesn't scale up very well, and it's very costly from an OpEx point of view, from a consumable point of view. So we went back to our refining and our petrochemical days and said, okay, well, how do we do this better? And we essentially took that knowledge base that we have. We went back and looked from our processing days and tried to understand how can we bring industrial scaled solutions scaled down from heavy industry down to this market. And that's how we approached this. We didn't look at a lab scale and scaled it up. We took refining scale and scaled it down. So our methodology is very similar to what you would see in a refinery or an oil processing plant or a petrochemical plant. That methodology does not require consumables. Our methodology has a very high throughput. Our smallest system can handle 0.25 gallons per minute. And so with that in mind, we're able to remediate THC and keep most of the cannabinoids intact. We're not destroying it in the process. So we don't really see any degradation. And part of that is really, really good heat control and vacuum control. And the other part of it is, we're scaling down and redesigning petroleum equipment to match the needs of this market versus trying to scale up lab equipment. And that's really been our secret to success here.
Really fantastic offerings that you have for folks. A one-stop shop, I would think, for seed in terms of equipment for seed propagators and indoor extract growers, particularly with the processing, particularly with the THC remediation equipment. How can folks find you, Derek, if they want to get in touch with Total Grow?
So the easiest way is to just go to our website, totalgrowcontrol.com. There's a contact tab, and they can fill out the form, or there's some phone numbers to get them to the right people. And we're a full engineering suite as well. We do design build. We also do operations as well, so we can take care of your operations, provide the manpower. We're stamped in every state in the country. So we're happy to help the customers do this as an entire project, and help them through the process all the way through.
Derek, I don't want that to be lost on the listeners. That's major. Supply the manpower. You're in every state. Somebody wants to get involved with this from stem to stern. Total Grow will be there to assist them, even with the labor, the design, the build, the equipment, the labor. And I find that the website, just in general, is a huge resource of information on multiple levels. Great information on the site alone for those kicking tires and exploring.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we thought that this is a fairly technical process. And while we do come out and train you, we do spend time with you, we thought it was really important to offer the manpower. So we will hire local engineers or local chemists to actually support you and be part of your staff, to run the equipment, to advise you, to check on everything, make sure it's running well. So we did that because we think it's necessary. If I had to think ahead, I think in the market that will change as groups get bigger and more sophisticated. But right now we think it's a need, and so we offer it.
And that's exactly what I mean by putting one foot in front of the other and working in tandem together to really build this hemp economy. And that's what it's taking. It's taking all kinds of creative solutions and motivated folks who are really dedicated like you. Derek, it's been a real pleasure having you on Hemp Barons today. I'm wishing all the success in the world for Total Grow and for all of the customers that it serves. Such a pleasure to be building the hemp economy with people like you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
A pleasure. Enjoy your Christmas.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Tell me, boy, you make me so bored. You need to walk the other way. I tell you once more. Please get out of my way. I don't want you no more. We're done here, boy. I know you think you're so fine, but you can't see clear. I've been wanting to unwind.
Hi, my name is Kira Reed, and I'd like to invite you to be inspired by the women who are leading in the cannabis industry. Each week, we will discuss empowerment, leadership, and what it means to be a woman in charge in marijuana, hemp, and CBD. As the founder of the Women Empowered in Cannabis community, I have had the great pleasure to get to know many brilliant and talented women who are CEOs, executives, politicians, advocates, and community leaders that are focused on creating a cannabis economy that is just, fair, and equal. We'll learn how these women make decisions, how they navigate a predominantly male industry, and what they're doing to level the playing field for women. I hope you'll join us.